Glory to Jesus Christ.
Glory.
So today, the 4th of July, the day on which we commemorate 235th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of the Independence. Why nobody corrected me yesterday when I said it was 300 some years? Somebody should have said something, because it is 235. I am 35, so this document is 200 years older. Exactly 200 years older than me. For 200 years, 235 years, this country uninterruptedly or uninterruptedly, not without interruption. Okay? Without interruption, 235 years. This country exists based on the same principles and the same government, the same political system, 235 years, which makes it the oldest country, not the oldest country in the world, but the oldest democracy and government that continually, for 235 years, on and on, the same system of democracy and of elections and of economical system and everything for 235 years. America is not an old country. It is actually one of the newest countries out there. Among the Western culture, this is one of the newest countries. But still, France, England, Germany, Italy, Spain, none of these countries that are much older as countries have had this blessing for 235 years of having the same system and same beliefs and same foundation. This foundation, what is this foundation? When I first came to meet America, the United States of America, this was year 1990. Year 1990. I was born, and back then in 1990, this was still the time of Soviet Union. This was the country where I was born, where I grew up, where I was educated, where I went to school. This was a country where many of the things, many of the principles on which your country is founded, those principles were missing from the country where I was born and where I grew up. We knew nothing about anything outside of the borders of Soviet Union. Radios were shut down. The signal was they would have antennas at the borders, so to shut off the radio waves, so we could not pick out on our radios foreign stations. It was a luck if we were able to find and listen to the Vatican station on a Sunday, so we could get a liturgy. The Ukrainian section at the Vatican radio in Rome, every Sunday, Ukrainian time is, I think, 9:15, which is 10:15 in Ukraine. We would sit down, twist the dial and try to find that station so that we could go to church in our living rooms, so that we could listen to divine liturgy. There was a sermon. There was usually some programming afterwards about Christ, about religion, something that we were completely forbidden. When I went to school, when my mother was taking me to school for the first time, for the first day, and you know how parents try to, and I do this to my children. I tell them, do this, don't do that, be good, say this, don't say that, and give them instruction, especially because this is something they do for the first time. When I went to school for the first day, my mother, all the way down to school, when she was walking me down there, she gave me a great lesson that I should not tell, God forbid I tell anyone that I believe in God, that I should mention religion in any way. This could bring put me into trouble, even though I was 6 years old. But so much worse, it could put a lot of other people in trouble. My parents, for once, my grandparents, my family, and so many other people. The priests who would come to our place to have the liturgies during the night. There was a lot of lies. There was a lot of corruption, moral corruption. I was 6, I didn't know anything about corruption in the government, in the economy and all that. There was a lot of moral corruption. And that corruption was sensed even by a 6 or 7 or 8 years old. Because we were not allowed this and that. We could not this and that. There was a lot of things that were forbidden. Well, in 1989, a year before that, the Berlin Wall came down, which marks the beginning of the process for the destruction, or I should say maybe not destruction, because that involves somebody from outside, destroying. This was really, I don't know if that is a proper English word, dissolvement, something that dissolves from inside. It just dissolves, it just falls apart. Because there is nothing, the strength that is keeping things together is not strong enough anymore. Soviet Union fell apart. It was not destroyed by anyone. It just fell apart. And back then, church was resurrected. In 1989, the first church in Lviv, in the city where I was born, where I grew up, was taken by force from the Orthodox. People just went inside on one Sunday for the liturgy, and they locked the door and they said, we are not going outside of this building until Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church is officially recognized. And what is that word when something is being outlawed and then they say that it's okay again? Reinstated. There is a technical, juridical word that doesn't come to my mind now.
Sanction.
That. They said we will not go out of here until our church, the church that we kept faith to for more than 40 years, since it was practically destroyed by the communist system and was by force replaced by the Russian Orthodox Church. Until our church is recognized, we are not going out of here. And they won. This church became the first Greek Catholic church. Again, it was Greek Catholic before 1946. After that, there was no Greek Catholic churches in Western Ukraine or anywhere else in Ukraine. Then the church spread. It took over other churches. It took over other parishes. People did. Priests didn't. We did not have priests then. This was a major trouble back then. There were no priests. People did it. One day they would gather together in their parish and they say, we're going back Greek Catholics because this is what we are. Our parents were this. So they would go to the Ukrainian Greek Catholic bishop and they will say, give us a priest. We now want to be Greek Catholics. And they didn't have any. In this time, a lot of Ukrainians from America would come to Ukraine to witness all this movement of resurrection, national resurrection, church resurrection, religious resurrection. And this was the first time I came to meet America. My first image of America was this. A dollar bill. I met this priest who was back then a chancellor of the Ukrainian diocese of Stamford. I was trying to remember it since yesterday, his name, and I can't. I couldn't. He might have passed away since then. He was advanced in his age. And after a brief conversation, I was 13 or 14. Back then, there was a bunch of us kids who were serving at the cathedral. And we all came to this hotel where there were some bishops from America, and he was with them. And he gave us each $1 bill. I remember taking this home, and my parents, my brother, all of the neighbors, they all came to actually hold in their hands a real American dollar. This was an icon. This was an icon of what America was back then, for what we could reach of America. And it was, everybody saw something else. Some people saw, this great eagle that is a part of your American
emblem.
How do you say that?
The emblem of the American
emblem.
Insignia.
Insignia. That's it. That's the word. Some people saw this pyramid, and then would start saying, "Oh, this is a Masonic sign, a Masonic symbol." But still, what caught everybody's attention were the words right in the middle, right here. It says, "In God we trust." I know you're used to this. This is something that is a part of your country. You've been swapping these things around since you were born. And your parents and your grandparents and forever, since this came into existence. For us, this was really a sign of a free country. Country that, yes, it had a Mason sign on it. Because there are Masons in this country. They have a president that was ruling this country how many years ago? You tell me. I don't want to take chances anymore.
That's Washington.
Yes, that's Washington.
Yeah, 235.
235? Was he the first president of the United States? See, I knew at least that. We, in our country, in the last 235 years, our nation was under at least 4 different governments. 4 different money were there, with different presidents, with completely different ideas. Some of them Masonic, some of them more religious. 4, that's at least. This was really a sign of stability. And a stability, economical, political stability, religion stability. Because of this saying that in God we trust. Later on, my knowledge of America developed, and this ceased to be an icon of America, of course, even though it still is for many things. But today's, especially the reading today, the one from the epistle that we heard, it says a very important point. It makes a very important point, even though that epistle reading is not chosen specifically for the 4th of July. It's chosen is just the epistle of the day, of the Monday after the 3rd week after Pentecost. But it says a crucial thing that has been understood very well by the founders of your country. It says that it is not action that sets us free, but it is our faith. It is our faith that makes us free. Liberty and freedom has always been the most important point, a founding stone, a cornerstone of this country. I don't have here the text of the declaration. I like to read parts of it during celebrations of the 4th of July, but if you go back to your houses, to your homes, and you read the first lines, it says right at the beginning that freedom and liberties are, and they name some other things, are the fundamental rights that are given by God to every single man, and no country can deny that. But what is liberty? And what is freedom? And where does it come from? And as we heard St. Paul say, it does not come from action. It comes from faith. And this is why it says right here that in God we trust. And that is the foundation of all the liberties that have been developed, practiced, believed in, and defended by this country. Not only in your country, but all over the world by your country. Today's gospel, which that one, I actually read it off my phone. I couldn't find it in the book of the gospel. But The gospel that we read today talks about Christ talking to the Israelites, and he is remembering them. Abraham. Abraham has a very important role in the whole history of salvation. And we call him, in theology, we call him the father of faith. Because he was the first one and the greatest one to make the faith cornerstone of his life. He didn't do just a theoretical thing. He didn't just one day wake up and he said, oh, I better believe in this God because he can give me this and that. It didn't come like that to him. It came to him in the form of a voice, an angel that came to him and said, take your son, take him to the mount, and offer him to God as a sacrifice. Cut his throat open. What they would do, the offering was the blood of the animals. So when they would offer an animal to God, they would step with their knee on the, squash the animal, cut the throat, and then press with the knee so that the blood pours out on the altar. Well, he was asked to do the same with his son. And even though, can you imagine how horrible, how terrifying that request was to him? His only son. But he said, I will do it. Why? Because I believe. And he went there to that mountain. You can only imagine how terrifying every step of that way was. But he fulfilled that promise, his promise. And because of that, God had mercy, not on him, not on his son, but he had mercy on humankind because of his faith. First of all, by saving his son. At the end, he said, he sort of held his hand right when it was up in the air with the knife. And he stopped him and he said, offer me just a lamb. And that will be good enough. This is why in the 50th Psalm, David says, God does not want sacrifices from us. He does not want lambs and blood sacrifice. But that applies to our lives as well, and to this country as well. God does not want people to suffer. He does not want people to sacrifice. But He wants us to have pure and concise hearts, David says in that psalm. Faith. That is what has to be at the base of this country. At the base of your liberties. At the base, the cornerstone that has been placed there by the founding fathers, it still has to be there. Now, another very important point that Christ brings up in his preaching today, He tells us what is the greatest thing that destroys freedom and liberty. These people, they thought themselves free. And for good reasons. They say, we are children of Abraham. We are children of his faith. This sets us free. And it is true. Faith sets us free, just like we heard in the epistle reading today. But Christ gives them an admonition. No.
Admonition.
Say again?
Admonition.
Admonition. There are different types of freedom. If you tie someone into a chair and he can't move, he's not free to move. Some of you are advanced in age or older. If you get sick, is that a freedom? You want to get around, you want to do this and that. You're not free to do that anymore. This is why a lot of people will say, people are not free at all. If you look at psychological freedom, there's no such thing. Political freedom, there is no such thing. If the Republicans have their president, the Democrats are not free. If the Democrats have their president or government or whatever, Republicans are not free. There's no political freedom. Is there a freedom of choice if you have to choose between two presidents or two candidates? You have three sometimes, but still, is that freedom of choice? There is no freedom Why? And Christ answers this question. The only thing that keeps us tied, not free, is sin. And this is why, besides faith, the second thing that really renders us free, and this is the message that Christ gives us all today. And I think this is the message that has to be spoken aloud in this country and in every other country in the world. The thing that sets us free is moral law, is morality. There is nothing that makes us tied, that ties us to sin, that makes us corrupted as temptations and sin. And there is a lot of immorality all around the world. So if your country wants to be the foremost place in the world for practice of freedom, for practice of free religion, for practice of human natural law that is given to us by God, morality is the first and the most important thing that has to be pursued. Morality among the children, among young, among older, among everybody. Morality in economy, morality in politics, human morality, personal morality. That is the secret, and that has to become an icon of this country. Glory to Jesus Christ.
Glory.